It's on. So we're actually recording now. Today we're talking about several subjects within the subject here of your function is the atonement. And I started out today with this idea. I wanted to talk about what Gary Renard put into his book in part 2. The title of this book is The Disappearance of the Universe. And this chapter is called The Holy Spirit's Alternative. Now, Gary started the Holy Spirit's alternative here with a quote. The ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. So there's a lot of things that are important about that statement. And I want to illustrate some of those, but I'm going to do it in light of what our function is in the atonement. Because the Course in Miracles defines precisely what exactly is our function in the atonement. So this is chapter 14. This is section 4, your function in the atonement. So when you accept a brother's guiltlessness, you will see the atonement in him. Now remember, Gary said, the ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. And now Jesus just said clearly, when you accept a brother's guiltlessness, you will see the atonement in him. So, seeing guiltlessness is the same as seeing the atonement. We're talking about our function in the atonement, but this section starts with looking at our brother. In our brother's reinterpretation, as driven by the Holy Spirit's special function for us, we see guiltlessness in our brother. So let's take a look today at how is that possible? How can we look at people in the world doing all the things they do, whatever they are, and say to ourselves, all I see is guiltlessness? So by proclaiming it in him, you make it yours, and you will see what you sought. So it doesn't talk about a lie here to see that what I'm going to say about my brother is not true. If I proclaim that he is guiltless, then in fact I must be able to see that. Otherwise, how could I proclaim it in truth? So I want to be rest at ease, and the Course in Miracles is showing me, in order to rest at ease, which is to accept the atonement for myself, then I must see the completion of it in him, in my brother, my sister, my brother, whatever it is, doesn't matter. People. How do I see through people? To see guiltlessness in my brother. You will not see the symbol of your brother's guiltlessness shining within him while you still believe it is not there. His guiltlessness is your atonement. So let's go back to what Gary said. The ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. Okay, so I'm going to now see that I must be able to do the same thing then, because I'm accepting of the atonement plan for myself. The Holy Spirit says, if I want to see the completion of that, if I want to see the truth, then I must see the truth through my brother, in fact, to see that I am in the guiltlessness of my atonement. His guiltlessness is my atonement. So I grant it to him, and in fact, not grudgingly, but knowing it, I grant it to him, and then I will see the truth of what I have to acknowledge. Of what I acknowledge now, I see the truth. So I acknowledge the truth because I see guiltlessness through my brother. that he has accepted the atonement, or that he is my atonement for me. Okay, so there must be a trick to this, right? So
Mary,
what would be the trick to this?
uh, can you ask your can you ask your question again, please?
Yes. So how would I go about being able to actually see the truth about my brother is that he's guiltless? If in fact I see him doing things that I say to myself like, "Oh, I wish he wouldn't do that." Oh, why
Uh,
that? Oh my God! Can you believe this is what they're up to again?
I can see that when I remind myself that that the personality which my dream character has is transient and is something I made up because I believed in a separate self. It's not real. And the same counts for my brother. When I see a personality in my brother and get upset by it, and not can and can't only watch it and see that it's transient and he's still innocent because he's not the personality, then it's a sign that I make my personality real and important and uh, to me.
Okay. So you're distinguishing here that you're going to see your brother's personality then when you look at your brother, right? Is that what you're saying?
I Yeah, I don't want to see it.
Okay.
I mean, like, I want to see it
Mhm.
as something transient, and because it's transient, it's not real,
Okay.
and which
So,
means, and when it's not real, it can't harm the truth.
so let's go back to what Gary said for a moment. He said, "But the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home." So you do see your brother in whatever circumstances and situations that you might be with your brother. You see your brother in those situations. So we're not really closing our eyes to what is happening in our mind. We see what's happening in our mind, and what's happening in our mind is we have seen our brother doing things, saying things, and being how our brother has been imperfect. Right? Is that what we see with our minds? We see this.
Yes,
Yes. So our minds are deceiving us to see something other than what the Course in Miracles is saying that might work for us. And what Gary has said is that there's another way to see. So far, we're going to have to agree that there must be a better way to see things because what we see seems to interfere with this process. I don't see everyone as guiltless when I look at what my mind shows me about people in the world. I don't see guiltlessness. Do you?
no, I don't.
No, that's honest. We don't. When we look at people and we look at the situations and circumstances of what's happening in the world, we really don't see guiltlessness. We really don't see that. What we really see is a lot of contradictions, some confusion, some chaos here and there, some people doing well, some people not. Maybe 3 billion people in the world don't have enough to eat today to have a proper diet. It's 3 billion out of less than 8 billion people in the world today don't have the right food to eat. So they can be nourished with whatever they're eating. 3 billion people, it's true. That's not a good thing, right? So if I look at the world and I see some people are starving to death altogether. Some people just don't have enough to eat and are slowly starving. And some people are eating something that isn't of any nutritional value to them just to fill their stomachs so they don't have to feel hungry. And approximately 3 billion of the world's populations is living in situations like that. So I look at the world today and I look at news that was in the news today, by the way. And I look at the news today and I say to myself, oh my goodness, How am I supposed to see the guiltlessness of my brother when this is what I have to look through to see it? So I asked myself a good question, and I began to wonder about it, and I began to say to myself, well, let me see then what the Course teaches about this, because in fact it's only in seeing what the Course teaches about it that I can see there is a model for understanding the truth, when in fact I don't seem to see the truth. So I happened to have read Gary's book today because somebody was asking about Gary's book, and I wanted to make some comments about Gary's book because something was asked in a question about it. And so I looked at Gary's book, and it was about this chapter, and it said this. And I said, okay, so how can I answer any question about this, in apparently needing to be a little bit different from what Gary was saying in his chapter, The Holy Spirit's Alternative. So actually I didn't read the rest of the chapter. I have read it before, but I didn't read it again today. I stopped with the initial statement here, and I went to see for myself, okay, so if this is about the Holy Spirit's alternative, I know the Holy Spirit is for the purpose of one purpose, is to show us His special function. The Holy Spirit always is the answer to any question. So I didn't continue with Gary's book, actually, because I trust that the Holy Spirit is always the right answer, has the right answer, and will show me the right answer. And also, as it happens, so did what Gary's statement was about, say, in fact, that the Holy Spirit is a reinterpreter of what the ego has made. So that's an important clue as to what it is that I'm going to need to know, because the Holy Spirit is reinterpreting everything that has to do with the world outside myself, which is the world that's being referred to here is that the world that the ego made. Since the ego is in opposition to God's will in all ways, then in fact the ego can only show us the ego's version of the truth on the outside of our mind, not in our mind. So the outside of our mind is where the ego forms the untruth. In the truth, which is always planted in our mind by God's will, then in fact we can see through what's externally shown to us in the world outside of ourselves, or in our outside mind, our wrong mind. Of course, refers to it as our wrong mind, so I refer to it sometimes as our outside mind. In other words, the mind that doesn't exist, I call it the outside mind sometimes, because it's a reflection back of the untruth. The outside mind is a reflection back of the untruth. If I would have an untruth, it seems that in fact the Course is telling me that can't happen. There can't be an untruth. There can't actually be an untruth because it is disconnected from God's will. God's will is perfect and unchanging, and never, therefore, can there be any exception to God's will. In God's will, it is complete and whole, and that's what He gives all of Himself. That is what He gives to all of His creation. So there's no place in creation either where God's will is not God's truth, is not the one truth. So this is all important background information that I already had. When I came to read this statement here about the function of my atonement, and it said, grant it to Him, and you will see the truth of what you have acknowledged. So if I would acknowledge all of that about the oneness of God's plan, of who God really is, that He is giving Himself entirely, always, and only what He really is to all of the creation, then in fact I've begun to see that I need to look through my brother, if in fact he is a reflection of the untruth outside of my mind or in my outside mind. So if I have an outside mind, then in fact I can see that I can close my eyes, and symbolically then I can remove myself from the exceptions to the truth, or my outside mind. I can remove myself from it. Perfect calm and peace, perfect acceptance of the plan, the atonement for myself, is shown to me only in what fits with the atonement plan. So I know what that is also, so I'm going to fill in here. The fact of it is, it starts in prayer and meditation. It allows me to see in prayer and meditation that peace is preferable to anything other than peace. So if what I see is not peaceful, not calm, not still, in terms of its effect, then it's an effect that's been separated from the truth. It's not an effect of this first cause of the one who is God. It's an effect of something other than that. It's a reflection back from the outside of my mind that if I see it and I acknowledge it, then in fact I find myself lost in it. So I don't even acknowledge then other than the truth. I grant it to him then that I see the atonement plan in my brother, and the atonement plan begins in prayer and meditation. So this is what I see about my brother. The first point of the atonement plan is that I will see it in prayer. So I see him as my prayer. How do I see him as my prayer? Because whatever he is in need of, then I see that is his prayer. His prayer is a call for the truth, and his actions, his words, whatever he seems to be doing in the outside mind, in the world outside myself, that is his prayer. His prayer is to be reinterpreted by the Holy Spirit. Everything that we do, see, say, feel, touch, taste even, all of it is being reinterpreted by the Holy Spirit for the purpose of allowing ourselves to see the truth. Through that, to see the truth. So grant it to him to see the truth of what you have acknowledged. Yet truth is offered first to be received. Even as God gave it first to his Son, the first in time means nothing, but the first in eternity is God and the Father, who is both first and one. Beyond the first there is no other, for there is no other, no second or third, and nothing but the first. So this tells me I must then be able to see in my mind a neutrality to what's outside of it and what's being reflected back into my outside mind from the world outside of my mind. Then in fact I must be able to see not just the outside mind, and that it is reflections of the untruth about the world outside of it, a second split away. Then in fact I can see that if symbolically I close my eyes to close myself off from that untruth, from that just confusion, conflict, and so on and so forth. I simply remind myself that closing my eyes is a symbol of shutting off the confusion, the contradictions, the differences. Even the similarities aren't even useful for me right now. But in prayer, similarities are helpful to some degree. So I see myself as needing to see others as similar to myself.
Can I jump in there?
You may.
What I got was that when I feel, when my love, or when I think I feel affected by the personality, or when I feel different from a brother, I perceive I bought into the idea of personality. And when I bought into the idea of personality and don't choose to see beyond the idea of personality, the next the product will be that I try to be happy with the personality, and that brings me deeper into the illusion of
Yes.
separate identities.
Okay.
And that also I see there is this again there's this theme of pleasure and pain, and that they are one. When I want to receive pleasure by this separated identity I dream of, and on the other side I feel pain because I feel So even if I like the person, I like the brother who I perceive as a person, even if I like the personality, like, oh, he matches to me, matches to my personality, my separate identity, so we match. Then even then there is this idea of separation which comes with personality, and then I reduce my love to try to find love, try to express the love I am in this limited idea of being.
Okay, so you're describing all the complexities of seeing the world outside yourself as though it's real. So they're not just reflections of the untruth anymore, or of the separated moments of wondering about what could happen outside of my mind. They're meaningful and real. Is what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you got it.
And we know that if we go and apply what the mind, the human mind, has designed in terms of understanding that, there must be at least 16 personality types, and each of the personality types is actually just really a reflection of a perfect personality type, and nobody is a reflection of all of any of the personality types really as perfect. Everybody is a mix of all of them to some degree, and so we can only estimate what in fact somebody's personality is like and what therefore their preferences might be and all that. It seems very complicated, doesn't it?
And it's really interesting that you brought that up, because when you spoke, I thought about Carl Jung's work of these personality types, and I remember that he said that at the end, the goal is to transcend all these personality types.
Very
because
good.
they're all limitations.
Very good. So Carl Jung spent quite a number of years. In fact, there's a whole book that documents his journey within to see the personality types. He called it the Liber Novus, or the New Book, or the Red Book. It's called the Red Book, and it's a big volume of all of his artwork and all of his experiences of looking in these dreams within himself about all of the types of personalities that he would meet in the world outside of himself. And so he looked within to find all of the confusion and chaos, and he found his way through it with that sort of understanding, just what you just said. He saw that we must transcend all of these personality types. He even had the experience of meeting in his dreams, I'm going to call them dreams, his journeys within. He had the experience also of meeting various different personalities, of various different people, in a sense, that were represented for him in his dreams, in his journey within, as individuals with certain characteristics and so on, like that. And that
It's
was all
like,
his work. He did spend a lot of time talking about this individuation of these personality types.
and when I listened to what you said, I thought about, it's like God is after me, and because God is so cruel, he and so boundless, he takes many forms, and all these many different complex forms are after me. And that's what I do with my brothers.
Yeah, that's the dream of separation, that it came to be real. So, of course, it's all going to be tormenting us because it's based on an untruth that we can be separated from God's will by the fact of that there's a world outside of our mind, and by the fact that therefore we must have a mind outside of ourselves to see the world outside of ourselves as though it can be separate from God. So we made up the idea of having a mind of its own, of our own, and then using our mind of our own to see the world outside of our mind, even, not even in our mind, but outside of our mind, to see the truth. So we removed ourselves from the absolute truth, God, and His one will and His holiness of giving all of Himself to all that is real. We removed ourselves from that, and then we removed ourselves even from that removal to see that, in fact, no, we really want something that we can look at one moment at a time, which never existed before this, but to see now that our mind can make a world outside herself that ticks away a clock on one moment, and now another moment, and now another moment, and now another moment. And so our mind outside of ourself made that world outside of herself to tick away at a time of one moment and another, from past to the future, with nothing to begin with, no time before it. And of course, well, I guess we might find there's no time after it either, but there's no time before it. So the universe begins to occur in our mind outside ourselves in a moment. And let's just say it's birth, because we could go into it a little further than just birth, But because, the baby is alive in the mother's womb before it's born, actually. So the baby could have a concept of time, in a sense, before it's born, couldn't it? But the universe, in fact, is born out of nothing in the way that we understand it. It's condensed into a singularity and then explodes into existence. Not really exploding, it really expands, but it expands so fast, instantly, it's like a universe outside of the mind. Instantly, it's a world, a gaseous, giant universe outside of our mind, instantly. So that's the power of our mind, that we can actually create something that we can place in our awareness as if it's outside of our mind. And now our awareness can be divided in such a way as that we can actually put into that existence outside of our mind thought forms to form galaxies, solar systems, planets, people, animals, and so on and so on and so on. So that's the outside mind and the interpretation of it by the ego to make the world outside ourselves. So we call that the ego in the Course. The making of the world outside ourselves is the ego. The ego didn't exist in the first realization that, in fact, God gives his all to all that is real. There's no such thing as an ego in that interpretation. And that's the interpretation that we have to rest on for strength, because that's what the Holy Spirit is for giving us the strength to realize the truth. So we are given the strength to realize the truth in this one mind, which is not confused and does not make a world outside of ourselves to be real for us, but is allowing of our mind to contemplate what that might be like. So the initial idea of a mind which is able to see God's will and cannot forget it, the initial concept of that as a mind separate from God, in a sense, is what we're talking about. So the right mind is what the Course refers to it as. It is split off from the one mind in only in interpretation, and it's the ego that interprets it after that to be that the mind can be outside of itself. The Holy Spirit shows us that can't be true. So the Holy Spirit appears in the same instant as the ego, and now our outside mind chooses to be the ego, which our outside mind now is being separated from the truth, as if it could have a mission of its own to create its own reality outside of our right mind. Our right mind is still with the Holy Spirit and sees with the Holy Spirit that all that is untrue, and that's why the Course calls it a dream, because we see in a lucid, vivid reality, we see the untruth of the dream. The characters in the dream are infinite in how they're made. So each individual character can infinitely exist anywhere in the world outside of ourselves, because we're infinitely made in this one mind that's true and right.
I wondered. I was chuckling
Yes.
with myself about the idea. Yeah, chuckle, please. About the idea how of spiritual bypassing, and how I would then, so after we have the session here, I go over to a friend and then I told her that she's not real.
Yeah, that would be awkward.
That would be awkward, and it's kind of it's upside down. It's I mean, if I would it, why are you laughing?
Yes, there was.
It's
Not at you.
yeah, not at me. Katie, you're not here. And that's also a joke I make with one of my neighbors. That's so cute. I told him, if you're not here and I tell you you're stupid, that's no problem because you're not here. So if you do something wrong, you no problem. You're not here. You can't be an idiot.
Yeah.
Because there has to be someone here.
That's an
And
interesting point, because the fact of it is in a sense we have to reinterpret what the course says to understand what the course says, don't we?
yeah, into my
Because we have to get
insane
rid of
mind, yeah.
we have to get rid of our own ideas about what's real, and that is a struggle to some degree, isn't it?
Yeah, because I like to play with my toys. Don't play with me like a toy.
So you who belong to the first cause created by him like unto himself, and part of him are more than merely guiltless. So we're actually being shown that we need to see beyond the infinity of guiltlessness. We need to see beyond that. So guiltlessness is one way to describe what we need to see by acceptance of the atonement plan, which is our function. Our function is to accept the atonement plan. To do that, we need to see beyond guiltless. The state of guiltlessness is only the condition in which what is not there, what you're talking about, when you see to your friends, you go to visit your friends and you say to yourself, now if we're not here, then it doesn't matter what we say about each other because we're not here to say anything about each other, nor to be offended by anything that anyone says about anyone. So we see we're not there. We're removed from the disordered mind. The state of guiltlessness is only the condition in which what is not there has been removed from the disordered mind that thought it was. So we have to see the closure, in a sense, of our wrong mind or this mind outside of the truth. The one mind that is with the truth can see that. The one mind that is the truth cannot. So the Holy Spirit now is the special function of seeing the truth when in fact there is a comparison to the untruth. So the Holy Spirit is the only source or the special function of seeing the truth. Because the Holy Spirit can reinterpret what was made by the ego so the truth can be seen through it.
And when I listen to Holy Spirit, and I wouldn't go over to my friend and say, "Oh, you're not real," because then I would be, when I feel like I experience the truth of my brother, I give my full, I am with that experience, and it would be useless. It, like, why should I waste my time to go to them and tell them what's not real when I experience in that moment the reality of them? I would be so happy with and I am happy when I feel their true presence or come close to that. And then there never was a thought of, now I should say I should lecture them. And it's kind of a sign that I didn't understand the course when I'm coming up with things like that.
So this in fact is a reality check. Do I understand the course before I engage my brother and sister about what I believe about them? Must I understand the course first? It's an interesting question, isn't it?
didn't understand the question. Can you repeat that? Explain it different.
It kind of rests on what we're looking at today, is that there has to be a reinterpretation of what the ego made so we can see that in fact we're on track with acceptance of the atonement plan for ourselves. If our function is to accept the atonement, or our function is in the atonement, then in fact we must be able to see the reality of that. And even so it can stand up to any comparison about it. So let's not defend the truth. Let's simply look on the truth. So let's look a little further here. It says next, for until you do, the state, and only this must you attain, with God beside you, for until you do, you will still think that you are separate from Him. The state of guiltlessness is the only condition in which what is not there has been removed from the disordered mind that thought it was there. Something was seemingly outside of our mind, people, places, situations, and circumstances, that were interpreted because they're made by the ego. They're interpreted by the mind outside herself, and the mind outside herself can never find the truth about it, because the truth about it is that has to be removed by this process of seeing God beside ourselves. Because until we do, we believe ourselves to be separate from Him, and therefore we believe ourselves to now need to see Him aside from ourselves so we can remember Him. And then, in fact, we can accept this truth that there's nothing other than His truth. No other order, no second, no third, nothing but the first.
Eric, I wondered so on the one side, if I feel I told you that pain and pleasure are the same, and I was referring to this one section in A Course in Miracles where it's about which is about that. And now I thought about what if one of my brothers is inspiring me to be gentle because I feel attached to their personality. And then I thought about what Kenneth Wapnick said about beauty. He said, when we see beauty in the world, it's a symbol of our own beauty. So I thought, in this way, it can be useful to me that I am loving with a brother, even when I do it because it's for me a special relationship, and I want to be loved back. I can, which is not real love, which is what a desire. I can let Holy Spirit use that. Holy Spirit, show me show me that my wholeness, show me how to expand this gentleness, show me how I can show me that in truth I am not only gentle with this brother, I am gentle with everyone, because I am this gentleness, and show me that only that makes me happy, and to see that in innocence, and not to judge myself for, oh no, I'm again I am gentle with this one brother and not with my sister, or yeah. What do you think?
That's good. So we recognize that we must, in a sense, feel the presence of God next to us. In order to remember how to use our mind more correctly, we must, in a sense, remember the presence of God, like as if He's at least next to us. We really can't be separate from God, but what we're trying to see is the correction of the mind outside ourselves. That's what the dream is about. So the dream is about, I look at the dream, and I look at all the dream characters, And I give them a purpose now. The purpose I'm giving them is what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is given to me. It's given to me that all questions can be answered by the Holy Spirit, because all questions are a need for reinterpretation of what has happened in the mind outside myself, to see that there is a reflection of a universe back to me that's separate from me, separate from God, separate from His will, and separate from the truth, as if there could be a second or a third. So the first principle that our function shows us is there can't be a second or a third. Nothing but.
Do you mean by there can be no second or third because you are referring to the idea of equality?
But we're looking because we're looking at the untruth, where there's differences, where there's separation, where there is a second and a third. Because we're looking at that to see it, we gave it a purpose to be corrected. We have to remember our purpose to do that. That's the presence of God next to us to remind us what are you doing this for? Why are you trying to be with your brother? Why are you trying to be with people? What are you using your mind for when you're doing that? Let's have a purpose for it. It can't be just to survive as people. That wouldn't be the purpose of it, because we would just go on perpetually forever and ever and ever and ever with the world outside ourselves, never making any progress. We'd survive in the world outside ourselves in our mind, but only in our mind, in a dream, could we survive that kind of world. And our dream would have to have all kinds of horrors to show us, in fact, the untruth of it, because what can the dream reflect back to us but its untruth, really? We can use the dream, however, to look through it, to see I can be lucid in this dream, in my right mind, to see I'm using my right mind for the purpose of seeing the reinterpretation of the world outside myself by the Holy Spirit, who is God's answer to all questions that I have, to see that, in fact, the world outside myself doesn't really exist except as a dream. Now I can see it exists only as a dream, and so I look through it and I see that's guiltlessness for me. Guiltlessness is being able to see the world outside myself as though there's nothing about it that can actually threaten anything else. Guilt, of course, would be the misuse of anything for the purpose of seeing separation, difficulties, differences, and a world that's infinitely possible just to be removed from God's will, from the truth, from this oneness, this perfect alignment of myself with God begins with my memory now of the presence of God. So I must remember the presence of God is what this is telling me. My right mind will be at ease, in a sense, that way. It cannot be taught. The next most interesting thing about this whole section, in my opinion, is this cannot be taught. I'm a teacher, and I've been a teacher for a long time. So you tell me this cannot be taught. I'm like, oh, well, that is going to be interesting.
You need another job. I hope Holy Spirit is thought about giving me another job.
Exactly. Right. What am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
Wow, wait. Learning applies only.
Holy Spirit, take my job away.
Yeah, but learning applies only to the condition in which it happens of itself. So what I got to do then, I can't teach anybody this presence that is necessary for us to see through the untruth. I can't teach anybody that presence, is what it's saying to me here now. Not saying this cannot be taught. It's very specific about what can't be taught. It doesn't say I can't be involved as a teacher, because it does say now, Learning applies only to the condition in which it happens of itself. So there is a condition then that must be able to be taught, and that's the way I learned to teach A Course in Miracles, is that there's a process here in the atonement, and it starts in prayer. So if I have a genuine interest in anything that seems to be that I need a reinterpretation of what is the purpose of this, then it seems I can take it into this process for beginning in prayer. And I can ask myself to begin in prayer. What is the purpose of this? What is this for? I don't know if the Course ever put it in a statement saying you should always ask what is the purpose of this. I think it said, however, I know it said you should always ask what is this for. So any condition then, it can be learned that in order to deal with any condition then, I can ask what is this for. That can be taught. When you have let all that obscured the truth in your most holy mind be undone for you, and therefore stand in the grace before God, your Father, He will give Himself to you as He has always done. When you have let all that obscured the truth in your most holy mind be undone for you, and therefore stand in grace before your Father, He will give Himself to you as He has always done. So this is a promise in a sense, you know. It says, if I will do this, then this is what will happen. If I will not allow myself to use anything but my holy mind where the truth cannot be obscured, then in fact I won't have any difficulty with accepting what has always been done for me.
Eric, I just thought about, so every time I'm feeling like since I practice A Course in Miracles, I'm feeling more and more happy with my brothers around me.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not because I like their personalities more. It's more like it's like, because I'm not, I mean, personalities are basically limitation.
Oh.
I could say, oh, okay, oh. And how can I be happy with limitations? And it's again this here, because my mind is split. I misinterpret pain as pleasure, and when I think and because of that, I can make special idols and special relationships and stuff like that, and try to make it real to avoid seeing that my guilt was never set reasonable. And so back to what I wanted to say, that I didn't learn to be happy with the personalities. I'm more happy because I see that that what I see in them is not real, and they didn't have to change because my perception is what made the personalities seem real to me. Now I see maybe they believe in their personality, that they are here, and maybe I do it, that they are here and that I am here. But I'm learning through A Course in Miracles that it's only because I believe it, it didn't make it real. And when I'm with my friends and sometimes they have talk about difficulties, it's such a pleasure to see that they are whole, and when in their wholeness they don't have the difficulties they are talking about, and they are like blocking themselves just by the idea of being something different
Yes.
than whole.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me happy, because then I know, oh, they're fooling themselves like I fool myself, so I can relax and I don't have to buy into that story. And I take my projections back, I think, when I'm seeing that.
Good. So you see there's no urgency to realizing the truth because the truth doesn't ever change. How could there be an urgency about it?
I didn't saw that. Can you talk more about that?
Oh. So God always gave to us the whole and complete truth without any alteration or difficulties interpreting it. This is what it is. It is not interpretable. It can't be made to be perceived. It is whole always, and always given to us as it really is, always whole, because we are the extension of the truth this way. There's no other truth this way. There only is the extension of the truth this way. The extension of the truth is not different than the truth. It's exactly the same thing as what it originates as. It's God extending himself into all that is real. All that is real is also God extending himself into all that is real. So all that is real is the extension of God on the one way of looking at it, and is God on the other way of looking at it. And there is two ways of looking at everything because the human mind has the ability to follow with the ego's perceptions, to interpret the ego's perceptions as a dual, this or that, choice making always. Now the Holy Spirit, however, reinterprets what the ego made and sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. And we just learned that you can't teach something. We just said, oh, you can't teach this. His presence cannot be taught. So we needn't be concerned about anything we've been taught, nor must we teach anyone anything, because his presence will never change. It is. And it is real, and it is the extension of himself, and we are the extension of himself as well. So we have to elevate the way we see ourselves in terms of interpretations about how we perceive ourselves. To be human, in other words, to accept God's plan, is almost impossible. We have to see through humanness, beyond it, to what's true that God's telling us about, is that our mind is in this innocence. Our mind is not wholly split from God. And in our right mind, we can maintain this presence with God, but it's a little bit of work. It's not hard work, but it's a little bit of work. If we would stop trying to work on it as if it's hard, we would see that in fact it can't be hard because the Holy Spirit is there to do it for us, to reinterpret what the ego has made. Because the Holy Spirit sees it as a teaching device. It can't teach us God's presence. Nothing can. But we can see with the Holy Spirit that this is a teaching device. This world outside herself is a teaching device. What the ego made is a teaching device. So I no longer have any animosity towards the ego even. I'm not going to say I love the ego or something like that, but I have no animosity towards it anymore. I see through it. It is only an obstruction of the truth. When I do see it, it is of no great importance because that I can see the obstruction, especially when I can see through the obstruction to the truth. My human mind can't. My human body can't live the experience of seeing through the truth. Yet I can close my eyes and therefore symbolically close off the untruth or the reflections of the world outside myself, as if that's what's real. I can close my mind off to it by symbolically closing my eyes and allowing myself to return to this presence where in presence there's a presence of God, in a sense next to me, and then there's this reinterpretation that I'm being shown by the Holy Spirit, because I'm with the Holy Spirit now in my right mind, and therefore I see what was outside of myself when I opened my eyes. I see what was outside of myself as though I can see through it now, because what I saw with my eyes and tasted with my tongue, felt with my fingers, looked at and marveled about is only a perception of the ego's interpretations of the opposition to God's will.
I have a quote here I want to read about truth, and it goes like this: truth is not what you want it to be, it is what it is, and you must bend to its power or live a lie. And it's not from someone, it seems like it to be from a Zen Buddhist. And I wonder if that's, oh, Katie, you're just doing what you can't do. You're bringing something else into the Course of Miracles.
It's fine. We bring it into A Course in Miracles is fine. We bring it, that's symbolic also, because we can't really, of course, we can't bring anything into A Course in Miracles, really. But we bring it into our mind, and so therefore we must bring it into the Holy Spirit to be reinterpreted.
Yeah, so can we reinterpret this quote, or do you want me to read it again?
You can read it again if you want to, but the fact is, what you're sharing with me is you see the purpose of reading anything, whether it's in the Course in Miracles or not in the Course in Miracles, it doesn't matter. We bring it into the Holy Spirit to see to see it interpreted for us. We don't do the interpretation ourselves. We don't do the interpretation by ourselves. This is a wonder. You know, in academia, which is where I came from, we have to discuss things to see if, in fact, they seem to be wholly true. So when we teach our students how to do something, we're teaching them something that's actually be employable. We give them real skills. We can't just teach them some kind of nonsense and expect them to be paying thousands of dollars for a semester.
Yeah.
Give them something real, something useful. So this is what So this is what the Course in Miracles, it represents. It symbolically represents something real. And anything else that we discuss also can symbolically represent something real until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah. So we can always see through everything then to its purpose, to see, can it be reinterpreted in terms of how it helps me to achieve or to know or to be with this presence next to me. So I'm no longer threatened. There's no harm anymore in what isn't true. It doesn't matter if it isn't true. There's no need to be angry anymore about what's not true. There's no There's no need to kill each other over what's not true anymore, because we can see that whatever isn't true, it simply can be brought into the discussion here about, let's see it reinterpreted for us. Let's see if it holds up to the scrutiny of, is this true? It's a simple question. Is this true? What is this for? The way the Course teaches it. What is this for? So when you have let all that obscured the truth in your holy mind be undone for you, and therefore stand in the grace before your Father, He will give you to you as He has always done. Giving Himself is all He knows, and so it is all knowledge. For what He knows not cannot be, and therefore cannot be given. Ask not to be forgiven, for this has already been accomplished. So now we're beginning to move into the acceptance of the truth. And in the acceptance of the truth, there has to be forgiveness of anything what seemingly wasn't true. And now we're beginning to see the simple way of doing that is see through it. See through everything. bring everything into this process of seeing through it from this new perspective of that there was nothing else other than the truth always. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Ask rather than to learn how to forgive and restore what always was your unforgiving mind. So we're allowed to restore what was our unforgiving mind just by simply asking to learn how to forgive. And then proclaim the truth of it. I see my brother now as myself in the acceptance of the atonement for myself. I see he is the completion of the acceptance of the atonement. When I see through him that he is guiltless, atonement becomes real and visible to those who use it then. And on earth, this is our only function. And you must learn that this is all that you want to learn. You will feel guilty till you learn this. For in the end, whatever form it takes, your guilt arises from your failure to fulfill your function in God's mind with all of yours. So there's no mind outside myself now. My only one mind now chooses only this one truth, which is without any other. No second or third. There is only the first. Can you escape this guilt by failing to fulfill your function here? Well, the answer probably should be no, but let me ask what this is for. What is this question for? You need not understand creation to do what must be done before that knowledge would be meaningful to you. God breaks no barriers, neither did he make them. When you realize and release them, they're gone. So realize then they're not there just for the purpose of releasing the fear instead of fearing the release. There's nothing to fear about the truth. So when you release them, they're gone. God will not fail, nor ever has, in anything. Decide that God is right and you're wrong about yourself. In other words, I'm wrong about myself being separate from God because I'm in his presence now. In remembering this, so I can see the undoing properly now, instead of seeing the undoing as though I'm living in a character in it as a dream character, I now see it from my peaceful realization of the truth. And this is what's waking me up to the dream now, so that I'm not anymore possessed by the character line, by the role, by the script of the character. He created you out of himself, but still within him. He knows what you are. Remember that there is no second to him. There cannot be, therefore, be anyone without his holiness, nor any unworthy of his perfect love. Fail not in your function, then, of loving in a loveless place, made out of darkness and deceit, for thus are darkness and deceit undone. So we're still going to see darkness and deceit with our wrong mind, so that it can be corrected in a wrong mind, or a right mind, that is just the dream. Outside of ourselves, it isn't anything to be condemned or frightened about. It simply is a dream in which we are fulfilling our function to see what is this dream for. Fail not yourself then, but instead offer to God and you his blameless Son, for this small gift of appreciation for his love. God will himself exchange your gifts for his. So it's as if we're nailed to the cross, and looking out there outside of our mind and seeing all of the people that said, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him, and all the people that said, love him, love him, love him, love him, and saying to ourselves, God forgive them, they know not what they do. It doesn't matter what they say, what they proclaim outside of ourselves, in our outside mind. What matters is what we understand is it's been reinterpreted for us by the Holy Spirit, to see that everything on the outside of our mind is for the one purpose. When we ask for what is this for, there can only be one purpose. There cannot be two. There cannot be one that says crucify him and one that says love him. There cannot be two. There only can be one. So before you make any decisions for yourself, remember that you have decided against your function in heaven, and then consider carefully whether you want to make the decisions here in this world outside yourself, in this mind outside yourself, or whether in fact your function here is only to decide against deciding what you want, in recognition that you do not know. How then can you decide what you should do? Leave all decisions to the one then who speaks for God and for your
Eric,
function as he knows it. Yes.
Eric, that makes makes sense to me. I mean, that fits to what I read in one of Gary's books, and I read there that we have only one thing we can decide, and everything else is predetermined. The only decision we can make is the decision between the Holy Spirit and the ego, and it's like the decision: where am I? Am I in this dream, or am I not in this dream? Am I dreaming, or is this real?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have in neutrality. Here's what happens. Something we were reading another time before this about some zodiac information or something like that. And you may remember I read a part about what my mind
Yeah.
used neutral in neutral.
Yeah.
It's like I can shift out of gear and into neutral, and I can simply rest in the strengthening of the truth. Then, so that's exactly the way I learned it was: let me shift out of drive or reverse. Let me just shift into neutral here and sit here and rest.
Hey, Eric, that reminds me. Oh, you remind me of so many things, Eric. What I also read in Gary's book, and it was there was a part where Persa told him that he should see that the body appears as a projection in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do that, when I see myself from above, that's how I do it. Like I use this direction of above, looking from above. I mean, I could also do it from under, but I'm doing it from above because it's kind of symbolic for me. I'm using it, and I feel more free when I'm seeing myself from above. See this dream character Katie with the body, and that it's like when I lift myself, I'm not lifting myself. I'm just getting aware that I am already I am uplifted.
Mm-hmm.
From the perspective of the dream, I'm uplifted, and from the perspective of the reality, I was never here, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because
So the alignment of it now is going to make sense to you. Like you said, you started out and you said that makes sense. So you can see from neutrality that what is true always makes sense, and what is not true never makes sense. So we're really not being asked to make a decision that's complicated. There only can be one decision, and the decision is never complicated. If we ask what is this for, we can see everything that I've experienced, which we can point to in a sense and say, there is something there, I want to know what that's for. If I can treat it that way in such as like it's an object, then it has to be reinterpreted for me. Nothing in the truth is separated from the truth. There's only the oneness of the truth. God, the truth, love, that's all one. There's nothing separate from it, so there's nothing to point to and say, what is this for? This is why it's really important that we understand the special function of the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit is here for the reinterpretation of anything other than what's real. To see that, in fact, it can be made to show you, if you'll only close your eyes to your confusion, if you'll only stop worrying about these things as though we have to figure them out, you'll allow yourself to see that the answer is given to you, that you can see that in fact there's no such thing as harm or difficulties or needs. So give up the frantic and insane attempt that cheats you of the joy of living with your God and Father, and of waking gladly to His love and holiness that join together as the truth in you, making you one with Him. And when you have learned how to decide with God, all decisions become as easy and as right as breathing. I don't have to think about breathing normally. Only when I'm short of breath do I have to think about breathing, really. Otherwise, it seems to be automatic for me, and this is a good comparison, therefore. Just like breathing, if I try to take control of it and do it my way, and my way happens not to be true, not to be actual, factual, real, then it won't work. Everything that I decide with God will work, just like breathing. But when I try to decide differently, it won't work. Just like breathing wouldn't work if I tried to do it differently than the way it's designed to work. So there's no effort, and you'll be led as gently as if you were being carried down a quiet path in summer. Only your own volition seems to make the deciding hard. The Holy Spirit will not deny in answering your every question what to do. He knows, and He will tell you, and then do it for you. You don't have to do it yourself. You who are tired will find this is more restful than sleep, for you can bring your guilt into the sleeping, but not into this. Your guilt cannot remain in the realization of the truth. There's no room for it because it's not real. In realization of the truth, there is only what is real. So unless you are guiltless, then you cannot know God, whose will is that you know Him. To know Him, then, I must see guiltlessness first. Therefore, you must be guiltless. To see the truth about this, then, I would have to know that I'm guiltless. In other words, there's nothing outside of my mind to confuse me. Guilt is the realization of something as if it would block me from the realization of that truth. Guilt is something that I put in place of the truth. Therefore, there's a good reason to be guilty of it. When it blocks me from the truth, I can feel guilt because, in fact, I put something in my mind that I need to be guilty about because it blocks me from my truth. Since it's all me that's doing it, I can stop doing it at any time because, in fact, I'm the only one that can create guilt within my own mind. Even you can't create it within my own mind. Even I can't create it within your own mind. We can pretend that we do that to each other, but we can't actually really do that to each other. Anybody can be guiltless when they look through the dream outside themselves, the confusion of their mind, as though their mind can be confused, and they see that in fact it can't be confused because there's always the reinterpretation of the untruth in the measure of the truth, which is to say, what is this for? And to realize it must be for the purpose of realizing the truth, and to allow the truth to be shown to me then, because I don't have to do it myself. Yet if you do not accept the necessary conditions for knowing Him, you have denied Him and do not recognize Him. Though He is all around you, He surrounds you. My little circle of fear is surrounded by the truth. He cannot be known without His Son, whose guiltlessness is the condition for knowing Him. And this is why the symbolic representation forms of people outside myself have to be seen as the Son of Christ, as a son of guiltlessness, as a son of truth, as a son, in a sense, that is one with the Father when He is in truth. So I remove from Him the guilt that I wanted to project on Him, because in fact I see that that projection of guilt is mine to be remorseful over for a moment, so I can let go of it, because it doesn't have a need out there in the world other than to show me that I'm guilty, which it does when I project it on my brother. So accepting his son as guilty is the denial of the Father so complete that knowledge is swept away from the recognition in the very mind where God himself has placed it. And if you would but listen and learn how impossible this is, do not endow him, therefore, with the attributes that you understand. You made him not, and anything you understand is not of him. Your task.
Eric,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's
Just
good.
it's good. It's kind of funny. I I I heard the theme of conflict when I listened to you, and like having two voices or two ideas in my mind. Yeah, and I see that when it comes to spending my day, I sometimes I have some preferences what I wanted to do, and I used to get in resistance to what I want to do. And now I see there are, and I remember I read that in a spiritual book. It was about how to deal with desires, and it was they I thought, wow, that's amazing when I read that, and I want to look on that with you, Eric, and how what A Course in Miracles would say to that. It said desires should be elevated, like they should be transcended, or they should be acted out. And I thought, wow, that's amazing, because it's against suppressing it, because when I'm suppressing a desire, I'm making the pull to do it gets stronger, because I make it to a problem. Like what Eric Purdy, a Course in Miracles teacher, yeah, his name is not important. Still, I love him, so I want to say his name because he's so cool to me. He said, if you wanted to be a hoe, just do it without guilt. And it's like that. If you have a desire to have do something, just do it, but do it without guilt. And if you feel like now I have enough of it, like when Gary Knight was loving his guitar playing, and then he felt like invisible hand was pulling the guitar always down. Which is a funny scenery. Yeah, he wrote about that. I think it was kind of like that. He was trying to play it, and if he felt something within him said, "You have already done that. You have enough of it," and he couldn't play it, like because I think it was at the beginning.
Well, he was a professional musician also.
Yeah, he was.
It wasn't like he hadn't learned all of the mastery of the skill of it. He did, and he was a professional, and he was able to play at a professional level pretty much anything, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that was before I met him, that he was trying to was playing, and then we got this spiritual experience, and yeah, and then that. So Purdy is kind of, you want to do something, do it without guilt, so do it. And Gary way there, it was like, I feel like there must be something more. It didn't make me happy, so how can I elevate this? How can I go beyond this? And either way, it's not about suppressing. And I can see that in my life, I was suppressing things, like I was, because and then I make it real, like I'm not allowing this to be in this moment. And when I was doing it, I was fixing it, so it was like, I make it real. I didn't want to have it there, but by don't wanting to have it there, I give it an existence.
So you can see what this next paragraph is actually talking about making a reality. Why don't you read it to me?
Oh,
Go ahead, read
yeah, I
the
can.
paragraph. Can you see the paragraph 8 okay?
Yeah, I see it perfectly.
Read it to me and see if in fact it makes sense to you that you in fact don't need to make your own reality. So you
It,
don't have to be. I mean, it's wonderful to be a professional guitar player or to be a
yeah.
basketball player or to be president of the United States or whatever you choose to do. It's all wonderful. And it's wonderful, really, especially when you see it in the light of that you can see the truth first before that. And nothing beyond that then needs to be true because it can be neutral now in realization of anything else other than what first is the truth. Go ahead and read this paragraph.
Your task is not to make reality. It is here without your making, but not without you. You who have tried to throw yourself away and valued God so little, hear me speak for him and for yourself. You cannot understand how much your Father loves you, for there is no parallel in your experience of the world to help you understand it. There is nothing on earth with which it can compare, and nothing you have ever felt apart from him resembles it ever so faintly. You cannot even give a blessing in perfect gentleness. Would you know of one who gives forever and who knows of nothing except giving? Oh, that's beautiful. The children of heaven live in the light of the blessing of their Father because they know that they are sinless. The atonement was established as the means of restoring guiltlessness to minds that have denied it and thus denied heaven to themselves. Atonement teaches you the true condition of the Son of God. It doesn't teach you what you are or what your Father is. The Holy Spirit, who remembers this for you, merely teaches you how to remove the blocks that stand between you and what you know. His memory is yours. If you remember what you have made, you are remembering nothing. Remembrance of reality is in him and therefore in you. The guiltless and the guilty are totally incapable of understanding one another. Totally incapable of understanding one another. Each perceives the other as like himself, making both unable to communicate because each sees the other unlike the way he sees himself. God can communicate only through the Holy Spirit in your mind because only He shares the knowledge of what you are with God. And only the Holy Spirit can answer God for you, for only He knows what God is. Everything else that you have placed within your mind cannot exist, for it is not in communication with the mind of God, has never been. Communication with God is life, nothing without it is at all.
Nothing without communication with God is anything at all. And what we perceive,
Ah, yeah.
we symbolically close off what we perceive then when we close our eyes. And when we do close our eyes, then we allow ourselves to return to this non dual aspect of ourself, in which this place, this one place where it seems like nothing otherwise, there is nothing else besides this one place. And so, therefore, we perceive everything from the same one sense about the truth. The neutrality, then, there's nothing outside ourself which makes the neutrality unreal, nor is there anything within ourself which makes the neutrality not allowing of anything. So there's no need to worry, there's no need for frustrations or difficulties if we can symbolically see that we can close our mind off from worries, concerns, frustrations, bitterness, resentment, interpretations, differences, even similarities. Then there can be no regret because there's nothing to change the truth. Everything then can be real. Everything can be real then, and what is not true, we can see through it then to this one place, in this reality of knowing that we stand here in the presence of God, or sit here in the presence of God, or lie here in the presence of God. It doesn't matter what our bodies are doing, we are with the presence of God in our minds when our minds are free of the dream outside ourselves as though it's real and as though we must be harmed in it or see harm in it, and there's no harm anywhere than to perceive, because we've shut our mind off to perceiving the untruth. We still can perceive, but we perceive through what there was before to block us from the truth. So even God does this. It even says so here that even God does this. Even God communicates only to the Holy Spirit. So why should we do differently than He does? When we want to communicate, we must learn to communicate through the Holy Spirit. We must learn to be neutral so we can see that in fact it can be done, that we can communicate to the Holy Spirit. And then as we communicate to the Holy Spirit, we can communicate also to each other as a device of this communication of the truth. So our purpose becomes very simple to ourselves. As I see the atonement in you, Katie, because I see the atonement in you, I see my great love for you. Because I see my great love for you, I see my neutrality to anything that seems to happen, and such as that can't be true, that you would be anything other than God created you to be the perfect love, to be the perfect extension of Himself. And that's what I see about you.
I hope